Bugging out and campsite selection. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Asymmetrical Preparedness. That's what we're talking about today, along with a bunch of other things regarding campsites, base camps, those kind of things. There are a lot of different names to them: patrol, layup points, patrol bases, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, the object is, say, recon is one of the most important things. Recon ahead. If you know where you're going to camp, that's the best idea, obviously. If you don't have a specific location in mind, say you're hiking along a trail, you're just like going to point A to point B and you got to camp a bunch of times along the way. Then what you want to start doing is you want to start looking for a campsite 2 to 3 hours prior to darkness, because you have to find a campsite that's appropriate, that meets the parameters I'm going to talk about, and you need to set up your camp. You need to set up your tents, you need to cook food, you need to set up sanitation, all those kind of things. Your camp order, basically. You can do that after dark, but it's so much easier to do it in the daylight. So reconning ahead is very important. Knowing the route you're taking will help you find really good campsites, or a layup point, whatever you want to call it, along the way. But why do you want to locate your campsite so early, 2 to 3 hours? You're like, we can make 2 to 3 more hours of ground. Well, because you want to set up your sleeping area, like I said, properly. You set up your cooking area, your sanitation area, you also want to set security and properly reconnaissance the area. Recon, meaning patrol the surrounding areas for threats. You may not know what's out there. If you're in a snow environment, maybe up on that ridge up above, it's getting ready to avalanche. You need to check those kind of things out. If you are in, say, a dry desert or something like that, and you're in a creek bed or something like that, you don't necessarily want to sleep there, because a dry creek bed, riverbed, could be a flash flood point. If rain comes in the night, flash flood happens, bam, you're wiped out. So you want to do that. You want to find out what's around you, as well as human threats, also natural threats and animal threats, predatory threats. What kind of prints do you see on the ground? What kind of animal signs do you see? What kind of scat do you see? This is all skills, though. You're going to have to know what you're looking for. If you just see footprints or paw prints and stuff like that, you don't know how to identify them, well, it's not going to be as useful. So learning those skills along with this is also very useful. But this is talking about campsites and camp selection, pretty much. So one of the things you want to do when selecting a site is you want to avoid extremes. You want to have shelter, meaning extreme. You don't want to have extreme angle. You want to have it relatively flat. You don't want to have an area out in the extreme heat, or a low area where a pocket of cold air can collect in the middle of the night. You want to have a relatively flat site on raised ground, maybe slightly sloped, so that the rainwater can run off of it. You want to have, well drained. As I'm glancing at my notes every once in a while, well drained, because you don't want a low spot. Put your tent in a low spot and then have it full of water. That would suck. If you're in a hammock and a tarp, not so much. It's not as relevant so much. And what I really love about hammock and tarp setups in areas like this, where there's lots of trees, is you can literally camp on a slope like that. You just get 2 trees, run your basically the tarp line, put your tarp over the top of it, sling your hammock underneath it, and sleep. You can be hanging over the edge of a precipice. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's what I like about that. It's a lot more, you're able to sleep and camp in a lot more areas, and in areas that nobody would be looking for you, probably, because they'd probably be thinking, oh, they're not camping on the edge of that cliff. Well, that's a good spot, actually. Obviously there's some safety things. You got to be careful, of course. But most people, I'd say, to probably tent camp. And if you don't have a lot of trees around, you may have to tent camp or sleep under the open stars, under the open sky, which isn't the best idea, because you want to be sheltered from, sun, wind, cold, bugs, there's a lot of different things you want to shelter. Shelter is just, it's one of those human things. We like shelter. So what do you want? What are you looking for? You're looking for close to water source if you can get, but not too close. You don't want to be so close that that the sound of it, like the running river or running creek or something like that, drowns out your ability to hear what's going on around, especially for your security posts. You don't want it also too close to water because of bugs. Bugs like going around water. So you don't want all those nasty mosquitoes and stuff like that. That's why you also want to avoid marshy, wet ground. You want flat, dry ground. Obviously, you don't want to put your tent or whatever it is in a floodplain, obviously. You want it protected from wind. So, and shade also. If you're in a hot environment, it's a shade type thing. If it's in a environment like this, you can hear the wind. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but here we're still shaded, protected from the wind by all these trees around us, but you still get some wind, of course. You want it level, not too rocky. You want it not in a dried creek bed like I talked about, not boggy, not wet. Also, another important thing is look up. A lot of people don't look up. Look up in those trees up there. Are there any dead branches? Are there any widowmakers hanging there ready to fall on your tent or on your hammock or on your campfire? Spread those embers, create a fire, crush you, whatever. It's important to look up, especially when there's trees around. Adequate shade if hot, like I talked about, and also the availability of wood for fire, like that. Wood for fire, like that down tree that I cut down a couple years ago. Wood for fire, like all these things around here. Wood for fire. A lot of it's stuff we've picked up and collected around here for our little campfires that we have on our property for the kids and everything, and to practice starting fires. So yeah, wood for fire. Camp layout and the location affects how you're laid out. But basically what you want is you want to have a sleeping area, you want to have a cooking area, and you want to have a sanitation area, like your latrine, your toilets. And you want them all separate from each other. You don't want your tents and your sleeping area too close to your fire because embers can get in your tent or your hammock and stuff like that, your tarp, and burn holes in it. You also don't want your cooking area too close to your sleeping area because even if you keep it clean, which you should, be meticulously clean. Don't leave any food products around because bugs and animals will come, give you a hard time in the middle of the night. So you don't want that. But you still, just in case you miss something or something like that, or just the smells of the food attract animals, you want it a little ways away from where you're sleeping. Same with sanitation. Your sanitation, where you're going to go to the bathroom, you want preferably downwind from where you are, because you don't want to smell it. You want the wind passing by you to it. You don't want to have to smell it. But if you do it properly, which I'll talk about, you won't really have to worry about that as much. So, position of your sleep setup, protected from the wind, away from cooking and sanitation areas, and upwind. Okay, so your bathrooms also, you want a little way, and you want to have it set up for privacy, because people like privacy when they're doing their business. You also want it away from your water source because you don't want any contamination, hole, ditch, anything like that you can use. Or you can use bucket and bag and pack it out. Whatever you do, you got to make sure that you are a wise steward of where you are, whether you're being tracked or whether there are threats in the area, or just because it's wise. Hole or ditch, you want to cover with dirt after every use. Cover with a couple inches of dirt. That's why you want to dig a good hole, which I'll show you just one sec. Okay, so a good example of a hole to go to the bathroom in would be right here. That is a good hole. Here, I will get down in it. It is about waist high for me. It's about that deep. That's deep enough. That would be an adequate hole for a lot of people. You don't necessarily have to do it this deep or this big, but this would be a good hole for like a base camp. So let me move back over there and we'll talk about the other topics. Okay, First, I wanted to show you an example of a clean, dry location for setting up your tent, like a tent, a campsite location. There you go. It's all cleaned off, and actually let me turn the camera a little bit that direction so you can see better. That is a nicely swept, cleaned area for a tent to go. There is a slight slope in the ground from here down to here, but it's not too bad. So what I would do is I would set my tent up right here, and I would put my head up in this location and my feet down here. So I'd be sleeping, with my head up and my feet down a little bit. And it would also allow for drainage if any water comes through there. So that's what I'm talking about for a good campsite. No rocks, no branches, stuff like that. Swept clean. You can use other branches and stuff like that as your brooms. So the next topic is cooking and your fire. Obviously, like I talked about, away from your sleeping area. Because embers, yes, burn tents, tarps, stuff like that. Also, you want to make sure that the area is clear of combustible material. Clear the area out around your fire pit. Make a designated fire pit. Rocks, whatever. Whatever resources you have in your particular area that you're looking at. You want to keep it clean because you don't want animals, bugs, all that stuff I talked about before. And your food and your cooking utensils and your cooking pans, your pots, your pans, stuff like that. You want to put that all in a bag, put it up in a tree, really high up, maybe between two trees, hanging in the middle, far enough so a bear can't get to it. That's called a bear bag. If you're in the desert, obviously you're probably not worried about bears anyway. So talking about these woods, bear bag is a very good thing to do. It also keeps it away from other critters. So sleeping area for, you got tents, you got tarp and hammock, or you just got ground sleeping. What are some important things? For tents, ensure that you're properly staked to the ground. That's another reason why you don't want hard, rocky ground. You also don't want it so mushy that your tent stakes won't keep your tent in place. And if your tent's, say your tent's on this side, angle your tent stake in like this so that the line pulls against it. If you put it like this, it'll just pull it right out. Or if you angle it the wrong direction, it'll just pull it right out if it starts getting windy. You may think it's good to go, and then a big wind picks up, and whoop, there goes your tent. Hopefully you're in it at the time so it doesn't go flying away. But anyway, so there you go. Pegs at angles, yeah. Flat, no depressions to collect water underneath your tent. Clear ground of sharp objects, all those kind of things, because you don't want it damaging your ground cloth, whatever it may be. Not so much a worry if you're tent and hammock tarping, or tent and hammock camping. There we go. Okay, so if you're looking at this as a long-term thing, long-term considerations, what kind of long-term considerations are there? Talking like base camp. Base camps, you want to get into a routine. Everybody needs to have their duties. Everybody needs to know their responsibilities. We call them SOPs in the military, standard operating procedures. So you may want to have those in place. Who's on security? When are they on security? Who is cooking? When are they cooking? Sanitation duties, all the other things, washing clothes duties, foraging duties, whatever duties there are for your particular situation, who has them, when do they have them, make sure that that's written down, times for everything, what's meal time, what time do meals start getting prepared, what time do watch rotations happen. But watch rotations are good to alternate, to make it flexible. Don't always like on the hour, top of the hour, every 6 hours. That's stupid, because the enemy, if there is one out there watching you, will know your rotation. And that's not good. Vary it up, mix locations up, mix your patrols up, do all that kind of stuff. Set up who's going to be on static guard duty, who's going to be patrolling, all those kind of things. And keep in mind people's skill sets. That's very important. You're not going to send, 90-year-old grandma in a wheelchair on guard duty. I'm sorry, that's just not realistic. So yeah, think about people's talents and their abilities. We all are talented and we all have abilities, but we can tailor our duties to our talents. So that's very important. Let me see, long-term, routine, mealtime, security watch rotations. Also, daily meetings are good to have. Meet up as a group, discuss things. How are things going? Where can we improve? What do we need to do? Is there anything we're lacking in? Do we need to pick up the slack? Is somebody not working as hard? Is somebody working great? Anything like that. And you can recognize people then too. Hey, great job on this. Or hey, you're doing a great job on this, but let's improve this, or let's do this, or something like that. You know, lift people up, but also make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's working hard, because everybody has to have their duties, but everybody has to do and perform their duties properly. Also might want to set a lights out time, a time to go to bed, a quiet time. You know, that's good to have anyway. And also the threat level in the area. Maybe you have to be on the quiet all the time. Maybe you are on the down low. You know, you're in an area of a high threat. Then obviously you're not going to be starting campfires. You're not going to be cooking food. You're going to be eating it cold. You are also not going to be making any kind of extraneous noises. No talking unless you absolutely have to. No lights. No jingling anything. No noise. No sound. No smells. That's very important. Let me see. Security LPOP, fixed positions, patrols. We talked about that. Waste disposal. Bury it, burn it, or pack it out. If you are on the down low, you don't want to burn it because that's going to let out the signature. Burying it is probably one of the best ways to do it, because also you don't want to pack it out necessarily. Depending on the situation, where you're at, what the situation is, that's a judgment call. You definitely want to keep your areas clean. Sanitation is very, very important. Bugs, animals, all those things, as well as your personal hygiene. Making sure that you're not getting sick, you're not getting injured, wounds aren't getting infected, all these kind of things are very important. Okay, so what happens when you want to leave camp? Move on. It's called striking camp. Packing it all up and leaving. You need to have a plan. Assigned duties, same thing. And one thing I like to do is leave one structure, tent, tarp, whatever it is that is protected from the elements, leave it up. Say a tent, for example. Leave one tent up. Because what you do is, as you're packing up your gear, when the gear is packed up, or you're waiting in between where it needs to go and stuff, you put all your gear into that one tent. So if it starts pouring down rain or whatever happens, it's protected. All your stuff is dry. You may still have to put it on and hike through crappy weather because you got to do the things, but at least you're starting off with dry gear. There's a lot to that also about packing bags. I've talked about in the past, wet bags, dry bags, all this kind of stuff. Maybe I'll do another backpack video soon and talk about dry bags and how I set my bag up, or my different bags. Anyway, yes, so you want to dismantle, you want to repack everything up. Hopefully dry. If you pack your tent, your tarp, your hammock, or something like that, whatever's wet, if you pack it up, then make sure you dry it out at the soonest opportunity, because you don't want that stuff. You don't want mildew and mold and all this kind of stuff. You get sick. Long-term event, you're looking for these kind of things. You're looking at these kind of things. Same thing, participation, duties, making sure everybody's doing their part. Yeah, keep one shelter up. Shelter, that's the word I was looking for. Clean, clean, clean. No trash, no waste. Like the Boy Scouts used to say, leave no trace. Very important. Whether it's a high threat environment and you're being tracked, or just because. We don't want to destroy the woods out there. I'm not some like crazy environmentalist, but I care about my planet and I care about my, where I live. I don't want to destroy it. I want to be a wise steward of our resources and the areas we live in, because we live in them now. Our children are going to live in them. Our grandchildren are going to live in them, and hopefully their grandchildren will live in them peacefully, hopefully. But anyway, so that's my video about camp setup. And I know it's just a basic video, but we're talking about a lot of different things here. It's a big topic, but the biggest thing is get out and practice it. Do you know how to set up your tent? Did you buy a tent at Walmart or off Amazon and you've never set it up? Well, if you don't, then how are you going to know how to set it up? You got to practice. And before you leave, make sure all the parts and pieces are in your tent, your hammock. Make sure you have your cordage. Make sure you know how to tie the proper knots to secure all this stuff. Make sure you have the proper number of tent pegs. Obviously, you can make a tent pegs out of wood. You can. There's a lot of things you can do like that. You can also make rustic shelters or expedient shelters. I can make a shelter out of what's out here. That would be very effective. And maybe I'll do a video about that someday. That's more of the bushcraft stuff. I don't really do too much of that stuff on video, but hey, maybe we'll head that route also. Do a little bit more of that kind of stuff. Looking to branch out, grow the brand, do a lot of different things. A lot of good things on the horizon. I hope we'll be increasing the quality of the videos. We're going to try to start doing some editing, things like that. But anyway, thank you if you're subscribed. If you're not, please subscribe. Please hit the like button, comment below, and support the channel in any way you want to. If you want to check out tactical security related stuff, check it out over on Patreon. Link is in the description, and Amazon storefront, link in the description. As well as a couple other things down there. Check us out. Video or email asymmetricalpreparedness@gmail.com. Love you guys, and remember, prep a little every day. It's very important. One thing is always important to do as a prepper is to work on your fitness. Fitness is key. When you're out doing these things like packing, carrying these packs, I didn't even talk about that. Carrying these packs long distance and all this gear takes strength, takes endurance. So get out and actually do the things. Practice your tents. Go hiking, go backpacking. Strap on your pack and go hike a couple miles. See if you're able to do it. See how well you do it. Or if you can't do it, well, then you got some room to work, because if that's your plan, or if that's a plan that you have, you need to make sure that it's a viable one, that it's not just a plan in your mind and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to bug out. That's not going to work. The more you do, the more you practice, the more you train properly, the better off you'll be. I love you guys, and blessings to you and yours.